I grew up in a very small town in Texas, Joaquin, Texas. And my family, I had a beautiful family. My father was principal of the high school. Really, it was high school, elementary, middle school. It was just, and my mother taught at that school. And so I had one brother, two sisters. My brother is deceased, but my sisters are still living. We had a wonderful childhood, despite the fact that it was during segregation. And yes, we had the leftover school books and unequal facilities, but the love was there and the appreciation for us and for what we could become. So education was stressed, and so I grew up with only a few incidents of Jim Crow raising its ugly head. We moved from that city, if you want to call it city, population 500, and moved to Gladewater, Texas, where we had more facilities, more equal, closer to being equal, but it was still segregated. And let me just back up a little bit and tell you one of the incidents that happened in Joaquin, Texas, which motivated my parents to move. My daddy was also a minister, and so we were in church a lot. And we were in church this one evening, like a Wednesday evening, and the sheriff and his men broke into the church and found someone they were looking for and pistol whipped him out the church. So from that incident, you can see there were no rights that blacks had that they respected. Well, we met when we were in high school, and it was, it was meant to be because we didn't go to the same school, we lived in different towns, but during that time, the teachers had a teachers meeting in the area, and he lived in Marshall, Texas, and I was in Gladewater. And so when the teachers met, they would invite band members from the region to come, and we would practice during the day, and that evening there would be a concert. And so we both played clarinet, my husband and I. Well, he wasn't my husband then, I was a teenager. But I thought I could play the clarinet. And I sat next to him, and I realized he was really great, and that caught my eye. He loved music. He was smart, but I didn't think anything would come of it because, number one, we were in different cities and just did not have the opportunity to interact. Different schools, different school. I mean, his school was AAA, mine was AA, so they didn't play each other. But the next year, same meeting, I saw him again, and we started writing, corresponding after that. And we just stayed in touch until I graduated from Spelman, and we married.
Very nice.
And what I admired was those attributes I mentioned. He was smart, he was musically inclined, and so was I, and he just was kind to people. I like that. Oh, well, I have two children. Son Thomas is a Clark Atlanta graduate. My daughter Kelly is not. She finished Georgia State, but I think she'd had quite enough of the Cole family surroundings, so she decided to go to Georgia State. She is in copywriting, and my son is a businessman. He is not married. Kelly is married and has 2 children and 2 beautiful, smart granddaughters. So I'm enjoying that. They keep me on my toes. I had thought growing up that I wanted to be a librarian. I knew I didn't want to be a teacher, but my favorite place in school, in grade school and high school, was the library. So I said, oh, this is the best job ever. And so I heard about Atlanta University, the Graduate School of Library Science, and I actually spent time in the library when I was at Spelman, and so I just knew that was what I wanted to be. After working as a librarian for a number of years, I had 2 children, and I was thinking, well, my last library job was as librarian at the social science reading room in the political science, I started to say poli-sci, political science department at Atlanta University. So I was around all these lawyer wannabes, and some of them were my student assistants, and they were studying for the LSAT. And I said, this is interesting. And I started reading the books as they were preparing, and I was reading. And I decided that's what I wanted to do. Well, I wouldn't say deeply involved. I was on the periphery, but very interested in the consolidation. I had been First Lady before. My husband was president of West Virginia State College, now West Virginia State University. But it was a different school in that a lot of the students they commuted. So there wasn't a big role for me. They didn't expect a lot in terms of, they didn't even have a president's home on campus. So I would show up and sort of be campus hostess for those activities that I thought were important. But it wasn't, I was also an attorney by then, had gone to Emory University Law School and passed the bar and worked in the State Attorney General's office. So I had my own career. So when I came back to Atlanta, I just wanted to be of assistance, to help, to make a difference, and to do whatever my husband needed me to do, including being a hostess for the campus, interacting with students, and it just came naturally to me. I would have to say the CAU Guild. This organization, I actually was thinking that we just needed a women's group. And so that faculty, staff, that was my initial thought. And I talked with my husband about it, and he said, fine, go right ahead. But I've always been interested in the arts. And I knew Tom was a chemist, and there were opportunities in the sciences, scholarships for students going into the sciences. But it really was brought home to me at his inauguration, or not at his inauguration, but after, the next year after he was inaugurated, there was a young lady who sang at his inauguration, Kotha Lackey. And Kotha had just a beautiful voice. and the next year she did not return to school. So I inquired about it, and they said she couldn't afford it. Now here is a young woman who had tremendous talent, tremendous ambassador for the school, but she wasn't a straight A student. She didn't qualify for any science scholarships. So I said, we need a scholarship for students in the arts and humanities. And so that's when we started thinking, and I worked with the development office and Cox Curry. We just worked together to form this group, the Clark Atlanta University Guild, and I had no idea that it would last as long as it has and raise this much money for scholarships for students in the arts. And I'm so proud of this organization, the women who have given of their time and talents and resources to make this organization a success. In 1988, my husband came to Clark College as president. And in the same year, by July of that year, he was president of Atlanta University. And this all came together for the consolidation of Clark Atlanta University. And so in 1989, when he was inaugurated, this idea of starting an organization for women sort of picked up steam, and it grew. And so our first steps, I didn't think about Jazz Under the Stars. The first steps were to be just to solicit, to form an organization, to get women in the community to be interested in this new, it's two old institutions forming one new institution, Clark Atlanta University. And you know, there were those who weren't sure how this experiment would work out. And so we really wanted to invite women in the community, not necessarily women, not only women on campus, but women in the community to help us to not only fundraise, but friend raise. And we did that at first by just having teams of women to really solicit funds for scholarships. That's how it started. And after a year or so of that, we decided, well, maybe this isn't bringing in the revenue that we had hoped, and maybe it would be more exciting and fun for us and successful to have an event. And our first event was not Jazz Under the Stars. It was an evening of Shakespeare with the actor Charles Dutton. And that was a successful evening, a fun evening, but we decided, and I'm not sure where the idea came from. I knew I wanted to have something on campus. Number one, it's cheaper. Number two, if you're trying to involve the community and get them to know the new university, why not bring them on campus? So we started looking around and thinking, the best place to have it on campus, the best place that would accommodate a large number of people was the quadrangle in front of Trevor Arnett Hall. And our first Jazz Under the Stars was Nancy Wilson. And what a great evening it was. And it just set the tone for our future, I think. And our first Guild Scholar was Miss Erica Meeks. And she is still she is a musician right now in Alabama. She came back for one anniversary. I've got to get her to come back again. Yes. Well, it's no question that I'm a fan of the arts, and I'm sure that background contributed to that. But the CAU Jazz Orchestra, the CAU Philharmonic, these are organizations, student organizations, that are just second to none. So we really wanted to highlight, as well as bringing, noted artists to campus and bringing the community on campus, we wanted to showcase our student groups. And the other reason I mentioned earlier, there were scholarships already for the students in the sciences. And I think those two facts made me want to celebrate the arts. Well, I have seen a lot of changes during my lifetime. Although I think my mother, you mentioned my mother she was a teacher and an author. She was a pianist, played for 2 church choirs in her 90s. We lost Mother last year. But she inspired me. She was one of these women that I think she was always liberated and always told her girls you could be anything you wanted to be, and she meant that. Although we didn't see a lot of examples around. I mean, you could be a teacher, you could be a librarian, but I didn't even know any women lawyers in my small hometown. Or when we moved to Gladewater, I didn't know any women lawyers. And in fact, I didn't know any lawyers, period, male or female, but I'd heard about the men and went on to hear about other women lawyers. But when I went to law school, I was married and had 2 children. Although it was an asset in a way, I mean, I was focused. I knew I had to go to school, learn as much as I could during the day, because the evening I could not count on with my children. So that was a hurdle, and yet it was an inspiration. And after law school, I hit hurdles. I interviewed, and there weren't that many opportunities for interviews. Back in 1977, when I graduated, they were not beating down my door to offer me a job as a lawyer here in Atlanta. But I did get an offer from the Attorney General's office, and I worked there for 5 years before moving to West Virginia, where I also worked in the Attorney General's office there. So I guess my lesson from that is there are always going to be opportunities. They may not be many, but you have to make the best of what opportunities are given you and just keep pushing ahead. Just don't give up, believe in yourself, and you can make it. When I came to Atlanta in 1959, that sounds so long ago, Atlanta was totally segregated. I came on a segregated train, and when I went over to Spelman, I had no idea that the AU Center students were going to be involved in less than 6 months in the Atlanta student movement. I just was an ordinary student at 16 years old. And so when the students in Greensboro, North Carolina, sat in at the Woolworths, I was stunned. But the other student leaders, from the AU Center, they were meeting, they were organizing. Lonnie King, who was the main instigator, came over on campus and spoke on campus, and I told my parents about it, and they said, whatever you do, do not get involved. And that was because they were afraid for my safety. They were afraid for their jobs. And they just, I had a brother in college at that time and a sister who hoped to go. So the first time they organized the students to go and sit in, I did not go. But within months, they had marches, and so I said, well, maybe in a crowd, they won't arrest me. And I feared most of all not going to jail, but having to go home to Gladewater. But it was an exciting time. Dr. King was a speaker on campus several times. I never got arrested, but it was almost like the red badge of courage. I missed it by, well, I'll tell you the experience. We were picketing Grady. Grady Hospital was segregated. And we were just marching around. Our first pickets were at Rich's, and we did A&P, churches, not Church's Chicken. We picketed churches. It was the church in West End, which is now owned by Clark Atlanta, was a segregated church. But anyway, here we are at Grady Hospital. And by then, I had picketed so many times and that I just thought, I'm safe. It's a safe thing to do. Nobody had beaten anybody up, and next thing I know, here come the paddy wagons. And I said, oh boy, this is it. They had about 5 paddy wagons. They filled up those wagons. These police vans that took students straight to jail. Do you know they ran out of room just before they got to my group? I was in the next to the last group. And that was my one, it's not my one opportunity, but after that, there were so many students in jail that they said they wanted to negotiate. So the business community and the student leadership sat down and worked out a settlement, and we didn't picket anymore after that.
Thank you so much for being a part of that history. And your last question.
Let me mention something else. 30 years later, after the sit-in movement and the picketing, I was First Lady at Clark Atlanta University, living in the president's home where the then president during the movement had invited the students to meet and organize. And I realized that not one time since that movement had the student leadership been recognized. So we planned a 30th anniversary, and it was a tremendous success. That would be my second, my first greatest contribution, I think, was the Guild, but that was the second.
Beautiful.
Well, before I get to that question, and it's sort of part of that question, I could not have done what I did without the support, number one, of President Thomas W. Cole Jr. He encouraged me, he gave me permission, and he made the Clark Atlanta Development Office available. I could not have done it without that. I could not have done it without the staff at the development office, who, instead of, they may have said some bad things about me behind my back, but they worked so closely with me. And Galen, I have to give you credit too. You have stuck with us through the years, and so many others. And I have to give credit to the Clark Atlanta University Guild members who stayed even when we left. They kept it going. The things I have learned, and what I'd like the students to know, is that it doesn't matter the obstacles. If you have faith in yourself and the strength to just persevere, you can accomplish so many goals. But if you're nice to people, if you work with people, if you don't care who gets the credit, then so many great ideas can come from that, and you can accomplish your goals. You just have to work hard and just keep pushing. And I just think the students are bright and they are talented, and so all they need is just to believe in themselves.
Any closing words?
That is my closing
That's your
word.
closing
Believe in yourself.
All right. Thank you so much.